Look under your hood right now. That orange and brown coating eating through your engine block, your valve cover, your exhaust manifold bolts, your battery terminals, your brake calipers, that is not dirt, that is not age. That is iron oxide, consuming your engine one molecule at a time. Rust does not stop. It does not slow down. It does not stabilize on its own. Every day you leave it untreated, it tunnels deeper into the metal beneath. What starts as surface discoloration becomes pitting. What becomes pitting becomes structural weakness. What becomes structural weakness becomes a seized bolt, a cracked bracket, a failed component, a repair bill that starts at $400 and climbs from there. Professional rust removal services charge between $150 and $400 for engine bay rust treatment. They use proprietary chemical compounds with clinical names and professional equipment and markup structures designed to extract maximum revenue from a problem that a $1 item from your kitchen solves completely. That item is a potato. Not a spray, not a compound, not a kit with 12 components and a 60-page instruction manual. A potato. The same vegetable sitting in your pantry right now contains a naturally occurring acid that dissolves iron oxide at the molecular level, neutralizes the electrochemical reaction that drives rust formation, and leaves a protective residue on the treated metal surface that prevents reoxidation for months. Mechanics have known about this for 70 years. The rust treatment industry found out what it did to their revenue 40 years ago. And the $10 billion rust remediation market has been built entirely on the assumption that you would never connect a potato to your engine bay. If you have never heard of this, what you are about to learn will change the way you think about every rust treatment product you have ever bought and every dollar you have ever spent at a body shop or mechanic. This is Forbidden Outdoors. We dig up what the industry buried. If this kind of knowledge matters to you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because what we open in this vault gets heavier every single video. The bell is the only way to make sure you never miss it. Now, let me show you why the rust treatment industry has spent 40 years praying you would never look at a potato and see what it can do to iron oxide. The global rust treatment and corrosion protection market generates over $10 billion in revenue every single year. Rust converters, rust inhibitors, rust encapsulators, phosphoric acid treatments, naval jelly, electrolytic rust removal kits, sandblasting services, chemical dipping tanks. Every product and service in this category exists because iron corrodes and somebody figured out how to charge maximum money for the solution. The automotive rust treatment segment alone represents over $3 billion annually in the United States. Body shops charge $150 to $400 for rust treatment services on engine components. Rust prevention coatings sold in automotive stores retail at $15 to $40 per can for product that costs $2 to manufacture. The margin structure of the rust treatment industry is built entirely on one assumption: that the active chemistry required to dissolve iron oxide must be proprietary, industrial, and expensive. It does not have to be. The most effective naturally occurring rust-dissolving compound available is oxalic acid, a dicarboxylic acid produced by dozens of common plants as a natural metabolic byproduct. Rhubarb contains it. Spinach contains it. Wood sorrel contains it. And the humble potato contains it in concentrations sufficient to dissolve surface rust from iron and steel components completely, neutralize the oxidation reaction, and deposit a thin protective layer on the treated surface. A compound that grows in your garden and costs $1 per kilogram cannot sustain a $10 billion rust treatment industry, so the industry buried the connection. They isolated oxalic acid, purified it, packaged it in branded containers with proprietary names, and sold it back to you at a 2,000% markup. Meanwhile, the source was sitting in your kitchen the entire time. The year was 1776, not in America, in Uppsala, Sweden. A pharmacy clerk named Carl Wilhelm Scheele was working after hours in a cramped laboratory behind an apothecary shop, conducting experiments with borrowed equipment and second-hand chemicals. Scheele was boiling wood sorrel leaves, a common European plant, in a reduction flask. As the liquid condensed, white crystals began forming at the bottom of the vessel. He tasted them carefully, as chemists of that era routinely did, and noted an intensely sharp, sour flavor unlike anything he had encountered in prior experiments. He documented the crystal's remarkable ability to dissolve mineral deposits and metal oxides on contact, and published his findings in a Swedish chemistry journal. The scientific community ignored him. Scheele died 10 years later at 43, poisoned by the cumulative effects of the chemicals he had spent his life studying. His discovery of oxalic acid was filed in dusty academic journals and forgotten for nearly a century. Then in 1882, a manufacturing chemist named George William Hoffman in Indianapolis, Indiana, was cooking rhubarb for dinner. When he finished, he noticed his heavily tarnished cooking pot was gleaming. The rhubarb had cleaned it completely. Hoffman, who already sold cleaning compounds commercially, immediately isolated the active compound. It was oxalic acid, the same substance Scheele had crystallized from sorrel 100 years earlier. Hoffman formulated a cleaning powder built around oxalic acid and began selling it to taverns and saloons for polishing brass rails and copper fixtures. The product worked so well that word spread across Indiana and then across the entire country. He named it after his most loyal customers, Barkeeper's Friend. A product still manufactured in Indianapolis today using the exact same formula from 1882. But here is what the rust treatment industry does not want you to connect. Oxalic acid does not just clean mineral deposits, it dissolves iron oxide through a specific chelation reaction. When oxalic acid contacts iron oxide, it forms iron oxalate, a water-soluble compound that rinses cleanly away. The rust is not scrubbed away. It is not painted over. It is chemically disassembled at the molecular level and removed from the metal surface entirely. Agricultural workers in the American Midwest discovered this property through direct observation in the 19th century. Farmers who handled rhubarb and sorrel crops noticed that iron tools left in contact with the plant matter came out clean. Metal equipment that had rusted during winter storage was restored by treatment with rhubarb leaf juice. The knowledge passed from farm to farm through practical observation. By the mid-20th century, professional metalworkers and mechanics knew that oxalic acid solutions were the most effective rust removal chemistry available. Industrial applications used concentrated oxalic acid solutions for metal preparation before painting and coating. But the consumer product derived from this knowledge was sold in purified concentrated form at premium prices, completely disconnected in the consumer mind from the potato sitting in the kitchen. The disconnect was not accidental. The rust treatment industry grew up selling the solution without the explanation. Consumers who did not understand the chemistry could not recognize that the active compound in the $25 rust treatment spray was chemically identical to what a potato juice application would deliver for $1. Here is exactly what rust is and exactly what the potato does to it. Rust is iron oxide. Specifically, the compound Fe2O3 formed when iron atoms bond with oxygen atoms in the presence of moisture. The reaction is electrochemical. Iron acts as an anode, losing electrons to the surrounding electrolyte, typically water with dissolved minerals. Oxygen at the metal surface acts as a cathode, accepting those electrons. The result is iron oxide, a compound that is weaker, more brittle, and more porous than the base metal it replaces. The porosity is the critical factor. Once rust forms on a metal surface, moisture and oxygen penetrate the porous oxide layer and reach fresh metal beneath. The corrosion front advances continuously inward. A surface rust layer that appears to be only cosmetic is actively enabling deeper corrosion in the metal beneath it every hour it remains untreated. Commercial rust converters address this by applying phosphoric acid to the rust surface. Phosphoric acid reacts with iron oxide to form iron phosphate, a stable dark compound that can be painted over. The rust is converted, not removed. The iron phosphate layer remains in place and can trap moisture beneath it over time. Oxalic acid does something fundamentally different. When oxalic acid contacts iron oxide, a chelation reaction occurs. Oxalic acid molecules bond with the iron ions in the rust compound more strongly than the oxygen bonds that hold the rust together. This creates iron oxalate, a water-soluble compound. The rust does not get converted into a different solid compound. It dissolves into solution and is rinsed away. The metal surface beneath is exposed clean, free of rust residue, with no conversion layer that can trap moisture. The secondary effect is equally important. Oxalic acid is mildly acidic, with a pH of approximately 1.3 inches concentrated solution and 3 to 4 inches the diluted concentrations naturally present in potato juice. After the rust dissolution reaction is complete and the surface is rinsed, a thin residual oxalate layer remains bonded to the clean metal surface. This residual layer acts as a temporary corrosion inhibitor by occupying the surface bonding sites that iron oxide would otherwise form on. The treated metal surface has measurably lower reoxidation rates for weeks to months following oxalic acid treatment compared to surfaces cleaned by mechanical abrasion alone. Now here is the potato connection. A medium-sized potato contains between 0.3 and 0.5% oxalic acid by weight, concentrated primarily in the flesh just beneath the skin. When a cut potato surface is applied to a rusted iron or steel surface, the oxalic acid in the potato juice contacts the rust and begins the chelation reaction. The starch in the potato acts as a mild carrier medium, keeping the oxalic acid in sustained contact with the rust surface longer than a water solution would. The natural sugars in the potato juice contribute a mild reducing chemistry that assists the dissolution reaction. Research published in the Journal of Materials Science on natural organic acid rust removal confirms that oxalic acid at concentrations present in common plant sources achieves iron oxide dissolution rates comparable to commercial rust. Treatment formulations at equivalent contact times. The mechanism is identical, the source is a vegetable. Let us talk about what untreated rust costs you over a vehicle lifetime. Surface rust on engine components is not merely cosmetic. Rusted bolt heads round off under wrench pressure, turning a 10-minute maintenance task into a 2-hour extraction procedure with a $75 to $150 labor charge. Rusted exhaust manifold bolts snap during removal, requiring extraction services that cost $200 to $400 per bolt. Rust-penetrating brake caliper slides causes uneven pad wear that replaces a $30 pad replacement job with a $300 caliper replacement. Rust on battery terminals causes resistance that reduces charging efficiency and shortens battery life by 2 to 3 years, costing $150 to $250 in premature replacement. The cumulative cost of unmanaged engine rust across a vehicle's service life between the first appearance of surface rust at 60,000 to 80,000 miles and end of service at 150,000 to 200,000 miles is routinely between $1,500 and $4,000 in rust attributable repair costs that have nothing to do with the cost of rust removal itself. Then there is the direct rust treatment cost. A professional engine bay rust treatment at a body shop costs $150 to $400 per service. A vehicle with significant rust exposure in a northern state with road salt may require treatment every 2 to 3 years. Over a 10-year vehicle ownership period, professional rust treatment represents $500 to $2,000 in service costs. Against that, a potato costs $1. The time investment is 20 minutes. The oxalic acid content of a single medium potato is sufficient to treat the surface rust on an entire engine bay. The rust treatment industry built a $10 billion annual market on the assumption that you would never do that math. Today the assumption ends. Let me tell you who already uses this. Antique and classic car restorers, the professionals who return vehicles from complete corrosion to show quality condition, universally use oxalic acid as their primary rust removal chemistry for delicate components where mechanical abrasion would damage original surfaces. Ask any professional restorer what they use on chrome trim, cast iron engine components, and original sheet metal where media blasting is not appropriate. Oxalic acid solution, every time. It removes rust without altering the base metal dimensions. Museum conservators who maintain historical metal artifacts, weapons, tools, and machinery use oxalic acid treatment as a standard conservation protocol approved by the American Institute for Conservation. The same chemistry that removes rust from a 200-year-old iron implement in a museum removes rust from your engine bay today. Professional boatyard workers use oxalic acid solutions as the standard treatment for waterline rust staining on fiberglass and aluminum boat hulls. The marine industry cannot use aggressive mechanical abrasion on hull surfaces without causing damage. Oxalic acid solution removes the rust staining chemically without surface damage. The professional marine restoration industry uses this chemistry routinely and charges premium prices for the service. Woodworkers use oxalic acid specifically as a wood bleach and rust stain remover for hardwood surfaces where tannins have reacted with iron fasteners to create black staining. Every professional woodworker knows what oxalic acid does to iron oxide. They simply call it wood bleach instead of rust remover. The classic car restorers know, the museum conservators know, the boatyard workers know, the woodworkers know. The only people who were not told are the vehicle owners paying $400 at the body shop for a service their kitchen can perform for $1. Here is exactly what you need and exactly what you do. You need 2 things: 1 large potato, any variety, russet, Yukon Gold, red potato, any potato from any grocery store for approximately $1 per kilogram, and coarse salt. Standard table salt or kosher salt, already in your kitchen. That is your entire supply list for light to moderate surface rust. For heavier rust deposits that have been developing for years, you can enhance the treatment with 1 additional item: baking soda. Used as a neutralizing rinse after the oxalic acid treatment to ensure no residual acid remains on the metal surface. Step 1. Put on rubber gloves. Oxalic acid in potato juice concentrations is mild, but you will be working with your hands in sustained contact with the treated surface. Protect your hands. Step 2. Identify the rusted surfaces you are treating. For engine bay rust, work on a cool engine. Never apply anything to a hot engine surface. Allow the engine to cool completely for at least 2 hours after operation before beginning. Step 3. Use a wire brush or coarse steel wool to break up any loose flaking rust from the surface. You are not trying to remove the rust mechanically at this stage. You are simply removing loose scale that would prevent the potato juice from reaching the bonded rust beneath. 10 to 15 seconds of brushing per area is sufficient. Step 4. Cut your potato in half crosswise, exposing the maximum flesh surface area. Sprinkle coarse salt generously on the cut potato flesh. The salt serves 2 functions. It acts as a mild abrasive that helps work the potato juice into surface irregularities, and it draws additional moisture from the potato flesh, increasing the concentration of oxalic acid at the application surface. Step 5. Rub the salted potato flesh directly onto the rusted surface using firm circular pressure. You will see the rust beginning to transfer onto the potato flesh within 30 to 60 seconds on light surface rust. The potato flesh will turn orange to brown as it absorbs the dissolved iron oxalate compounds. This discoloration is evidence that the chelation reaction is occurring, that is, rust leaving the metal and entering the potato. Step 6. For moderately rusted areas, allow the potato juice to remain on the surface for 5 to 10 minutes after the initial rubbing. Do not let it dry completely. If the surface begins to dry, reapply fresh potato juice from the same cut surface or cut a fresh section. Step 7. For severely rusted areas that have been developing for years, apply the potato treatment and cover the area with a piece of plastic wrap to prevent evaporation. Leave for 20 to 30 minutes. The extended contact time allows the oxalic acid to penetrate deeper into the rust layer and reach the metal surface beneath. Step 8. After the contact period, wipe the surface with a clean cloth. Use a second cloth dampened with clean water to rinse the treated area thoroughly. If you use the extended treatment, follow the water rinse with a light baking soda solution rinse, 1 tablespoon of baking soda dissolved in 1 cup of water to neutralize any remaining acid. Step 9. Dry the treated surface immediately and completely with a clean, dry cloth. Do not allow the treated metal to air dry. Water remaining on the freshly cleaned metal surface will begin reoxidation immediately. Step 10. Apply a light coat of any penetrating oil, WD-40, mineral oil, or petroleum jelly to the treated surface immediately after drying. This displaces any remaining moisture and provides temporary corrosion protection while you arrange a more permanent protective coating. For severely rusted surfaces requiring multiple treatments, repeat the process after allowing the surface to dry completely between applications. Most surfaces show complete rust removal after 2 to 3 treatments. One important note: this treatment works on surface rust and moderate rust penetration on iron and steel components. It is not appropriate for structural rust that has compromised metal thickness or integrity. If the metal beneath the rust is pitted deeply, flaking in layers, or shows through holes, the component needs professional assessment or replacement regardless of surface treatment. Rust removal does not restore lost metal. It removes the oxide layer and stops further progression. Always assess structural integrity before relying on a rust-treated component for safety-critical applications. Your great-grandfather did not take his farm equipment to a rust treatment specialist. He did not buy a $25 can of proprietary rust converter with a clinical name and a markup structure designed to extract maximum revenue from a problem his garden could solve. He did not schedule a $400 service appointment at a facility with specialized equipment and certified technicians charging professional rates for chemistry that costs pennies per application. He had knowledge, practical, direct, observation-based knowledge about how materials interact, about why rhubarb leaves left iron tools clean after a wet season, about why the oxalic acid in common plants dissolved the orange stain on the fence post that nothing else could touch. Knowledge passed from farmer to farmer, from tradesman to tradesman, in the era before an entire industry grew up to replace direct knowledge with branded products and professional services. That knowledge did not disappear because it stopped working. Carl Wilhelm Scheele's oxalic acid dissolves iron oxide today exactly as it did in an Uppsala laboratory in 1776. The chelation chemistry between oxalate ions and iron ions has not changed. The rust on your engine bay responds to potato juice exactly the same way rust responded to sorrel leaves in the 18th century. It disappeared because the moment oxalic acid entered the commercial rust treatment market, the industry understood that explaining its source would destroy their pricing model. A consumer who knows that a potato contains the same active compound as a $25 rust treatment spray is a consumer who stops buying $25 rust treatment spray, so they sold the chemistry without the education. And a generation of vehicle owners grew up paying professional prices for kitchen chemistry while the source sat in their pantry. Now the education is complete. 1 potato, $1, 20 minutes in your driveway, and the rust that was going to cost you $400 at the mechanic starts dissolving under your hands right now. If this opened your eyes, subscribe to Forbidden Outdoors and share this with every vehicle owner you know who is still paying body shop prices for a service their kitchen performs for free. Every share preserves what the industry spent 40 years trying to keep invisible. Every subscription keeps this vault open for the next person who deserves to know. The next Outdoors opens soon. What is inside it is heavier than anything we have opened yet.